Morning.
Welcome to the reverse mentoring session. My name's Diana Belfon and I'm the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Specialist for Northamptonshire Healthcare Trust. And it's my privilege this morning to welcome Angela Hillary, who's the CEO of Northamptonshire Healthcare Foundation Trust, and her team to talk about reverse mentoring. And we are especially privileged this morning to have the founder of reverse mentoring in the UK, Associate Professor Stacy Johnson, with us today. So you are in for a treat today. So we're going to be looking at the Nhft experience of reverse mentoring, and also to see whether we can do this within our partnership here in Northamptonshire. So I just want to welcome you to invite you to share who the facilitators will be today. So joining myself will be Louise Bennett and also Dawn West, who are part of the organisational development team. So they will be your facilitators today. You have to excuse me. So the next slide, please. So just a few housekeeping. Your cameras have been turned off and your microphone's muted until we have concluded the session, because at the end of the session, we want you to be more interactive. We want to hear your questions on reverse mentoring. So what we'd like to do is to invite now, for the people who are hard of hearing, just to know that we've included you in this. And if you'd like to use the transcription part of the facility, please do so. You'll have the opportunity for a question and answer session at the end of the session. So please use the chat box or please use the raise hand function. So the next slide, please, just to introduce you to Nhft, for those of you who don't know. We've got David Gletcher, who's our Senior HR Business Manager, and he was really instrumental in Nhft in pushing forward the reverse mentoring. And of course, we've got the wonderful Angela Hillary, who was brave enough to be one of the first executives in the UK to take on reverse mentoring in her organisation. Then we have the fabulous Stacy Johnson, who is the founder of reverse mentoring. And of course, the formidable Chris Oakes, who was also brave enough to say, look, we're going to be doing this in Nhft, groundbreaking. And finally, we've got Aaron Mandalia from the Nhft Equality team, who's going to share with us some of his experiences of being a mentor of reverse mentoring. So I think that's enough from me. Let's hear from the people that you've come to hear. So I'd like to now pass you across to David Gletcher. And David, we want to know why reverse mentoring? Why did Nhft consider reverse mentoring? Across to you, David.
Thanks, Diana. I think firstly, I was just going to start by outlining what reverse mentoring is. I thought that would be quite helpful for people, just so we understand. And I think for us, we saw reverse mentoring as a learning intervention, and learning is a really critical part of it, because we do need people who want to be mentored to have that commitment to learning. It's the people who are receiving the mentoring need the learning commitment, and they need to want to commit and learn to learning more around race and race inequality. So if we break it down in terms of what it is, so mentoring is an individual who acts as an advisor or a coach for a less experienced person, providing expertise, professional knowledge from a more experienced background. So let's note that the mentor there is somebody who offers advice, offers support, and is able to answer questions. The mentor's not a teacher. There's somebody who guides and supports and provides advice along the way. And that links back to that learning commitment that I mentioned at the start. So traditionally, when you think about that definition, the expertise, the professional knowledge, the more experienced perspective comes with somebody from normally in a higher position in the organisation, somebody in a position of power. What reverse mentoring does is flips that power relationship on its head. So why does it do that? And why does it do that when we come to race? Because what we know is that colleagues from Black or Asian or minority ethnic backgrounds are less likely to be found in senior positions. So what we're doing in reverse mentoring is having somebody from a lower position mentoring somebody in a higher position, hence the term reverse mentoring. I guess the easiest way to explain this is a grandparent mentoring a grandparent being mentored by a grandchild on something like TikTok or Instagram, for example. It traditionally flips that mentoring relationship. Normally a grandparent would give advice, support, help and guidance to a grandchild. But in this situation, the subject is unknown to the grandparent, and therefore the child is in a position of power and is able to do the mentoring role. That's the beauty of reverse mentoring. That allows us to kind of have experiences and insight as part of a learning intervention. And we worked with Stacy to do that around race and race inequality, but the model and the reverse mentoring concept works equally as well across all protected characteristics. And Stacy's got models around gender, but also got things around students mentoring practice managers, patients mentoring staff. So again, taking people in unperceived positions of power and giving expertise and mentoring to people in a powerful position. I guess why did we do it? Why was it important? We knew that conversations around race, ethnicity, and equality was critically important. But we also knew that conversations around race, inequality, and ethnicity was a very difficult conversation to have. And we needed a framework in which that conversation could happen safely. And that's where reverse mentoring comes into play. I'm just going to share very quickly just a picture. And it was a picture that meant quite a lot to me when Stacy showed it in one of our training sessions, our very first training session. Hopefully that's come through. So the good bit about this picture is in the reality box, you can see the person who's in the hole is actually the person who's in this instance doing the reverse mentoring, because the person on all the boxes at the top is the person who needs that experience of what it's like to live in that other position. That's the reality of what we've talked about so far. An equality position is to place everybody with a box. But as we see, by treating everybody exactly the same, the outcome is still the same. Marginally better, but still pretty much the same. The person in the dark blue t-shirt still is unable to see. An equity position is trying to level the playing field and have a situation where the person in the blue t-shirt has the most boxes and is able to see the, I think, baseball game. And the final position is liberation. But what struck me about this picture was the fence, because the fence is inequality, and the fence has been there for centuries, and sadly will probably be there for centuries more. But what struck me about the fence was, what was my role in keeping that fence there? How did I do things that I was completely unaware of that maybe painted that fence a little bit, or maybe popped a nail in it somewhere, but ultimately allowed that fence to continue? And what we thought about reverse mentoring and what we saw after speaking to Stacy was reverse mentoring can break down parts of that fence. It can put holes into it because it can allow people to see in the first picture what it's like to live in a completely unusual and unknown position. It was a really powerful tool for us, really important initiative, and we're really glad and grateful that Stacy worked with us to do it.
Thank you, David. That was very interesting to see why we did it. But, you know, we need to understand what was the experience of Nhft in doing this programme and what is in it for the leaders in our partnership. And we'd like to now hear from Angela Hillary, Chief Executive of Nhft.
Thanks, Diana. Good morning, everybody. And firstly, can I say thank you for joining the session today. It's great that so many have joined in. So, so what was our experience? And just probably before I start with that, I would just want to say that we knew we had some problems. And I think that's part of any organisation's understanding of this, is that you need to be very open and transparent about that there are things you've got to improve upon, and be open and transparent about the fact that problems do exist. And whilst we knew there was problems, we didn't quite know how to address them other than what we were doing already. So we knew that we needed some help, and of course we'll talk more about that through Stacey's work. But part of that was recognising that through our networks and our people were telling us that they didn't necessarily trust what we were doing or understand fully what our intentions were in trying to improve things. We know we wanted to do more about race inequality, we knew that, but we hadn't got really the skills and the expertise, I would say, in terms of that lived experience that was clearly part of this experience that we so needed as senior leaders in the organisation. And it's fair to say that we tried other things, so there was different interventions going on. This didn't exist in isolation. But what was really attractive to us and fitted with a lot of what we do here at Nhft was the co-production element of it, the fact that it was actually designed and supported together in partnership. That was really important. And I think also we use a lot of storytelling in Nhft, and reverse mentoring was based on people sharing their stories and their lived experience. So that was also something that we found fitted well with what we do routinely in the organisation. It helped us do that in a very structured way. And the lived experience is something that I think we've taken from this experience into so many other aspects of our development as an organisation. So it doesn't end here, that's for sure. But we were also keen, as part of the experience we took forward, to widen our reach. And I think the intentions initially were about using band 5 nurses, but we wanted to make sure that we had colleagues from all levels involved, etc. So that was our approach, to make sure the experience fitted with our values and cultures, really, that everyone is a leader here at Nhft. So that helped us, I think, because it helped us to think about connecting at all the levels of the organisation, and I really think that did help us to propel forwards in terms of what we found came out of the programme itself. And of course today you're going to hear from Stacy, and I think our experience with Stacy was that she had such passion, she was so compelling, she's a force of nature in fact, and I think that in itself was our experience, and you'll see some of that through this morning. But I think that helped us because, you know, passion won't do it on its own, but the real sort of passion and evidence base that Stacy was keen to develop with us and explore with us was something that we found very, very rich and certainly added to what we experienced here as an organisation taking it forward. The other part that I would want to convey is the important element of supporting colleagues when you go through this process. And that was really important, not least for mentors, but mentees as well. And again, that was something we thought about, but also learnt about through the experience. And I think getting that psychological support, the psychological safety for everybody was very important. So we did introduce peer support for mentors and reflection sessions for mentees as well, which I think, again, looking back, helped enormously. And I'm really pleased that we took those steps early on. Now, part of that psychological safety is because, of course, asking anybody to talk about their lived experience is a privilege. It's a privilege to hear it, but it's also challenging for people to share their stories. And I think that we need to all be very conscious that it's not easy to share, and that it is often traumatic to share those lived experiences. So it's very important to be able to deal with the emotion of the subject in the sessions, and we found that too. And it was really important that we as an organisation didn't just listen, but took actions as a result of it. And of course, that's something that I'm sure through everybody's experience of people sharing their stories would concur with. And I think what I saw when the exec team were going through this individually was that, as with any change programme, people dealt with it differently. So some people found it easier to talk about, some people found it challenging, other people took longer to understand the intervention itself and its benefits. And equally, as an exec team, over the time, I saw more and more people then starting to become confident and able to role model what was required out of the sessions into the organisation itself, and to really talk, I think, increasingly about areas and subjects that they perhaps wouldn't routinely have spoken about before. It would have been part of what people's thought processes were, but they wouldn't really have been talking about it within the team, the organisation, or within their own directorates, and that really did help. And I think over time what we saw was conversations growing, so conversations that matter is what I call them, and ones in which everybody got more confident to deal with very sensitive discussion topics, and people just really embracing it, which is clearly what you want out of the programme itself. And things started to change, so we've had lots of more focus, and I'm sure Chris will talk a little bit perhaps in his feedback in terms of how we've taken some of that forward. But I think we got more confident as an organisation to weave it into other areas, not just through the reverse mentoring experience, and that helped because, of course, as we've said, this is not a programme that's done in isolation. You have to do it with many other things as well. But it has certainly drove and driven for us the whole focus on race equality. And, you know, having done the reverse mentoring programme, that continues. And we certainly have that as a really clear priority in the organisation and across our group with Leicestershire Partnership Trust as well. So Chris leads a programme called Together Against Racism. That came out of the work that we've done, the important focus we continue to give it. This isn't a programme that you do and it finishes, end of. This is something that you continue and you expand upon and you build upon. And certainly that's, I think, what we've done. And I think to just give you a sense of what's in it for leaders in the system, all of you are leaders in this system, because it doesn't matter what level, what role you're doing, everybody's a leader in my eyes, is that you've got the opportunity to do a lot of learning. You've got an opportunity to change your mindset if you're open to that. You've got an opportunity to be challenged and supported. And you've got, I think, some really great sense of developing qualities as a leader, of being more curious, not accepting things at face value, triangulation, which of course is so important as a leader. And I think above all else, being able to understand the impact of people's lived experiences, their stories, and to recognise that behind everybody is a story. You may or may not know it, but increasingly important that you know that it does exist, and be able to be confident to deal with that as a leader. So I think that's what it's all about. And as I say, most certainly what we've done is continue the journey since the reverse mentoring experience. As I say, it's just a platform from which to build, and we have continued to prioritise this as an organisation, as a group, and I'm really hoping that the system will also see the benefits in doing that through the experience of sharing today. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela, for that sincere and honest approach to reverse mentoring. We need to understand, okay, we know reverse mentoring is happening in Nhft, but what's the framework around it? Can we just walk in there and just do reverse mentoring, or is it more structured? Can I please invite Stacy Johnson to tell us more about the reverse mentoring framework?
Great. Thank you so much, Diana. It's very rare that I have to correct the wonderful Diana Belfon. But here is a correction. So Diana said Nhft and Angela Hillary were one of the first CEOs, first organizations to trial reverse mentoring using the framework. I'll correct you, Diana. You were the first. Right, the first. So I remember turning up to Berrywood Hospital late because I got lost. And it was the first time I had tried out the training. And you weren't subjects, you were pioneers as an organization. Okay, so you know, I want to really recognize the role of Nhft and Diana, and of course Tendai, who was the EDI practitioner who brought me into the organization, and your role in my personal journey developing reverse mentoring. All of us together, right? I am, because we are. And so one of the things I've started saying about reverse mentoring for inclusion is treat like dynamite. This is not an intervention you can just deploy without thought. The more I do it, the more I see the power it has for junior staff and the power for leaders, but also I see the potential for harm if done unintentionally, if done as a performative action, if done with the wrong intentions, okay? And as a result, I developed a framework using theory, tested it out and refined it with the community, and then tried it out with Nhft first. And again, through continual action research, trying it out, evaluating it many, many times. Now, up to about 36 organizations across the country. My first international one was in Wales. This is what we've kind of learned as the way that perhaps has most potential, okay? I'm going to share some slides now. Just tell me, Diana, when you can see my slides. So, okay, perfect. So the framework and the models I'm going to talk about how one might move from one organization doing reverse mentoring as a one-off to a sustainable embedded reverse mentoring program at scale. What I really want to see is reverse mentoring for inclusion as ubiquitous in organizations as traditional mentoring, as normal coaching. So it's one tool in a toolkit. It's not the only one. It's one of a number of tools. And we want it to be as systematic and accessible to staff as is normal mentoring and things like coaching and, clinical supervision, for example. So what we're aiming to achieve, what Angela was referring to, if I were to sum it up, is for the people in the organization, the leaders particularly, is culturally humble leaders. Reverse mentoring facilitates the development of cultural humility in leaders, key role holders, and other organizational influencers, right? So as Angela said, not everybody is necessarily leading the organization, but everyone can be leaderly, and you want those people to be culturally humble. And therefore, for the organization, and by that I mean Nhft, but then maybe at system level as an organization made up of a number of other smaller organizations that actually are places where there is transformative inclusion. Again, not just performative inclusion that's about ticking the res data box, but transforming inclusion in the organizations. I won't go through all of these quotes, but one of my favorite quotes about reverse mentoring, which I use in the training. So thousands of mentors have been trained and mentees using this quote that came from an Nhft leader who said, "This has been the most important piece of work I've done in the 30 years I've worked for the NHS." Another chief executive said, "This has been one of the most profound personal development experiences I've ever had." From the mentors, the junior staff, I'll just point you to the short one at the bottom. Junior staff saying, "It's a gift, isn't it?" Reverse mentoring. And I really encourage leaders and junior staff to really make the best use of the gift, okay? So this is some of the things that reverse mentors and mentees have said about the program. So like I said, treat like dynamite, right? So this reverse mentoring framework, the reverse mentoring for equality, diversity and inclusion framework, is very much about guiding organizations in a systematic way through the decisions that they need to make to be able to have a high impact reverse mentoring program. So note it's a framework, not a prescription. So the idea is that it wraps itself around the personality of the organization by helping you to make decisions. And as you can see, there are these 4 components. And the whole idea is that we don't just pair people up and hope for the best. We do it intentionally. So at the top middle, you see that a big part of it is me understanding what is the organization's commitment to this work. And you can see there's a range of things there. We're looking at, are the individual leaders going to symbolically sponsor the work and step forward and say, "I will go first. I will submit myself." And I use language like that with CEOs. Will you submit yourself? Show that humility to learn from somebody who's more junior than you, someone who is ostensibly less powerful than you, okay? Will the organization practically give people the time to come along to the full day of training? That shouldn't be happening on their day off. As you can see in the left, then it's the practical things. How do you prepare the junior staff and the leaders to actually, the junior staff, for example, to challenge the leaders, to stay in the mentor role, to think about what they want to share with their leader, their partner, their reverse mentee. So the reverse mentors get a whole day of training. The leaders just get 2 hours of preparation. Again, that language is deliberate. The junior person, the minority ethnic person, the disabled person, the trans member of staff, They are the experts by experience. They are trained a full day. The leaders just get a couple of hours because guess what? I don't want them to know what's going on. I want them to be on the back foot. I want to disrupt the normal power dynamic that would mean that the leader would take over. So they have to lean on their more junior member of staff, who is the mentor, to lead the conversation. And over on the right, you can see the ongoing support that mentors and mentees get. So we don't just pair them up and say, see you in 6 months' time. I hope you're okay. Good luck. If it all goes wrong, I'm sure you'll be fine. We offer monthly peer support sessions for the junior staff, the reverse mentors, and at month 2 and month 4, it's a 6-month relationship. We offer reflective practice for the leaders. And actually, again, this refinement came from Nhft. It was a member of staff on that first training day when I said, oh, we have peer support for the junior staff. And the person said, well, what about the leaders? I said, well, they're powerful. They don't need any support. And that person was like, no, but they might retreat behind that fence and rebuild the fence. You need to get them to be reflecting and continuing to deconstruct themselves as a group. So you can see how this community has really influenced the development of the framework. And then at the heart of the framework are the reverse mentoring models. So we don't give the junior staff a list of topics or a list of activities. We say, here's what you're trying to achieve. You bring your own material, your own ideas and examples to trigger discussions, okay? So one of the first model, the base model that you use at Nhft, which would be for minority ethnic staff, reverse mentoring staff who are white or of a different ethnicity, is the race model. The 4 domains: resistance, action, compassion, empowerment. As you can imagine, loads more details in there. But we have since developed a range of other models, and we're developing more models all the time. So the race is the base model: minority ethnic staff, reverse mentoring senior staff. We've got GRACE, generic, RACE. So this is staff with any protected characteristic, reverse mentoring senior staff, so disabled staff, etc. We recognize, because this is about transformative inclusion, that it's not just about people with characteristics protected by law. Many people are working wounded because of their personalities, because of personal identity that is making them feel marginalized. And not all of those characteristics are protected by law. So the GRACE Plus model, used, for example, at Guy's and St. Thomas's, which is now on their 6th cohort of reverse mentoring. This is, for example, for people who are saying, look, I am the carer of an autistic child. Remember, caring responsibility is not protected by law. I need my employer to understand what it is like. Okay, and of course, the TRACE model developed during COVID so that reverse mentors and mentees who were very busy, as you can imagine, during COVID, could say, let me tell you about the difference in my experience as a junior member of staff on the front line with a disability or with some other protected characteristic. Let's talk about our differing experiences of COVID. We're using that model now as well, where there's any turbulence. So the T is turbulence, triggering event, traumatic event. So organizations, for example, that are merging have been using the TRACE model. And under development now, loads of a few other models: the TRADE model, transition. So this is a notion of trading places. This is where service users are reverse mentoring staff who are designing services. The PRAISE model, pedagogical, resistance, action, illumination, solidarity, empowerment. This is where we have healthcare students with protected characteristics reverse mentoring practice staff. So, for example, we're trying that at the University of Nottingham and the University of Surrey, because some students are saying, my practice experience is poor. I am exposed to racism, and that person is assessing me. It's affecting my degree classification. And actually, you know what? I don't want to work in the NHS now. That has impact. And the trend model, we're trialing this with young people, so over 18s though, where people might be talking about widening participation, recruiting younger people into jobs. What is it that we don't understand? Or people who are designing services for young people. So it's this notion of trend, okay? And of course, each of the domains has so for example, the E is empowerment, the N is novelty, the D is divergence. How is it different for me as a younger person? we don't want to just be coming into organizations and retreating and then training and repeating. We want to build capacity in organizations so that organizations move from dependence on me to deliver the training through to independence. So we have a train the trainer program where we take you to independence within 3 cohorts. So in the first cohort, we train, but then the potential trainers observe. And then we recruit additional trainers. So people who have been in that cohort, minority ethnic staff, disabled staff, might say, I've actually had a really good experience. I'd like to facilitate other people having a good experience. Yeah, I want to come on the trainer program. So it's not just people like Diana, HR leads, OD leads, but also people from the affected communities that will be trained as trainers and facilitators. They then have a 3-day train the trainer program. In cohort 2, those trainers plan the second cohort, and we support them. We walk alongside them. We co-deliver it, right? And we give them community of practice monthly meetings to develop their practice, their confidence around delivering the program. Cohort 3, the trained facilitators will deliver the program, but they're observed by me and my team and signed off as competent. Because as you can imagine, like I said, treat like dynamite. And I will not release people to train without me being confident that the quality of what they're delivering is going to not cause damage to mentors or mentees. And then there's ongoing community of practice support. We're seeing communities of practice around reverse mentoring delivering. What we've been seeing in the last 6 months is organizations like you saying, how can we do this across larger system? How can we do this at scale? How can we just not be sustainable, but really embed reverse mentoring as business as usual across organizations? So we have 3 examples of ICSs that we've been working with. One where it's a very small scale approach, a CCG leadership who've had 2 cohorts. I've just said, okay, we're now transitioning to ICS. We have 6 new board members. Run it for our ICS leadership. Okay, case study 1. That's a London CCG. Case study 2, an ICS in the south, actually no, northwest, has commissioned reverse mentoring for their providers. So there are 3 providers in that ICS, and they've simply commissioned on behalf of those 3 providers. But the ICS leadership is not being reverse mentored. And then the large scale one, case study 3, is one ICS in the south where the first cohort is the ICS leadership, their integrated care board will be reverse mentored. Then the providers will be brought in. We're running a train the trainer program across the system, training 15 trainers and facilitators. They'll have ongoing community of practice support, and then we're running it in the other providers, but also their social services, their primary care services partners in that ICS. And of course, they've made a kind of 3-year commitment because they then want the ongoing support, updated training. When new staff arrive and want to be trained, if people leave the organization, we always then will have a pool of 15 trainers in that ICS. And so I know I've gone over my time. Apologies, Diana. So any questions and discussions? Oh, I'm not. No, sorry. I'm passing back to Diana for to hear from some of the mentors and mentees.
Thank you, Stacey. What a wonderful systematic approach to the gift of reverse mentoring. It's really made us appreciate, Stacey, that you can't just rock up and let it happen. A lot of thought's gone into this to make it a success. And I'm really pleased to see that other partnerships, just like us in Northamptonshire, have considered reverse mentoring across all organisations. And today we have those organisations represented in the audience. But what was it really like going through reverse mentoring? What is the experience of being a mentor or a mentee? We'd like to invite Chris Oakes and Aaron Mandalia to tell us what it was really like going through the process.
Hi, thank you, everybody. Welcome, everybody. Yeah, I mean, I remember meeting with Stacey when she first came, and as David and Angela described our desire to move forward with reverse mentoring. And I think when I came to start
the reverse mentoring with my mentor. I suppose, honestly, I thought, well, I think I'm not sure how much I learned, because I'd spent 30 years dealing with equal opportunities, diversity, leading groups, all sorts of things. But I was very open to it. The reality was I learned a huge amount and at a very deep level, so that it has changed actually how I see things and how I approach things. And I think when you come to something like this, you come with your own history. And I certainly, in my background, I came from a working class background, and I was the first person in my family to go to university, and I sort of faced quite a few challenges with my family to do that and to move forward. So, I felt I'd sort of really pushed on and dealt with some challenges. But when I went through the reverse mentoring, my main mentor described her experience in her life and her career and the challenges she faced. And I was, completely taken aback about the level of challenge she dealt with and what she managed. She'd come from Zimbabwe on her own to come to England. The qualifications she brought weren't really properly recognised. And she felt she needed to find a career that would support her, and she chose nursing. But again, while she was first in the country, living on her own, doing lots of warehousing jobs, I believe, got quite a few manual jobs, and doing all of that while studying and listening, not having her family with her, and listening to the depth of her experience, I thought, well, actually I had it pretty easy when I think about it, but that wasn't how I'd thought about it before I went through the reverse mentoring process. And we actually spent quite a lot of time talking about her experience of work, and she described various challenges she faced, things that went on. And there was a very pivotal moment where she was describing something she'd experienced with a manager or something that had happened that really I thought wasn't right. But what she described was that she didn't feel she could do anything about it. And I had a reaction to that, because I suppose I thought, well, no, you really should have done something. You should have said something. You should have reacted. That's what I would have done. Surely you should have done that. And that was what I was thinking in my head. But the more we looked at it, her experience, and people talk about lots of microaggressions. So her experience had been that in her working life, it was really quite clearly the message that no, that wasn't what was expected. She shouldn't do that. It wouldn't be welcome. And I think that made me think at a very deep level that, I was clear what I would have done, but then I started to think, and we might call this white privilege, that my working experience and what I'd been through had told me not to accept things. It empowered me to challenge that type of thing. But if I was really honest about it, for my mentor, that wasn't what she had experienced. And therefore it was, clearly understandable. And we talked through that and look at how I can provide support and talking through it. But the huge impact that had on me was it made me truly understand. And I think it goes back to David's point. It made me completely understand that fence. And it left me with a challenge to myself. What was I going to do about that fence? Because we had a lot of initiatives at Nhft. We'd done a lot of work, but I very much from reverse mentoring got into a space of this, as the director of HR as well, I got into a space where this just isn't enough. More has to happen. We have to do more. And certainly our last set of RES and WDES plans were far more ambitious than we'd done before. And as Angela described, we committed to the Together Against Racism across LPT and Nhft. And for example, we've got pledges from all the directors, which we've worked through in terms of, again, support from the BAME networks. And an example is we've undertaken a very kind of deep level of learning and development for over 80 of our middle and senior managers in a course called Understanding Racism, which has brought a lot of different thought and understanding into the organisation. And it was that scale of ambition that I was keen that we put forward and I pursued, but equally all of my executive colleagues and Angela supported and wanted to make happen. So I think for me, reverse mentoring really made me think differently. I started to notice things differently, just in life, and when I was out and about, even going for a meal or shopping, you know, what was happening around me, and it really affected me at a deep level. And I still connect periodically with my mentor, and it's great to touch base about that and talk through that learning. And I think that's the opportunity here. If you're really interested in sort of learning that will really shift your understanding, really grow you as a manager, really allow you to come at things differently, you know, this is something for you. It has to be in the environment as Stacey's described, but I couldn't recommend it highly enough. I think it's an oft used word, but it is a game-changing approach to what we can all do about diversity and inclusion. So thank you all very much for listening.
Thank you for that experience, Chris. It's really insightful. Before we move on to Aaron, can I just ask you, Chris, how has reverse mentoring changed your experience of being a leader within an NHFT?
I think, and I think this is so important. I think it makes me look at things and think about things differently. When you're looking at how you're going to create a solution, you come at it differently, and you think about co-production, you think about inclusion, you think about how you're going to work with people to make something a reality, and that leads to success. But I think that's that fundamental element. If you see it differently, what you do will be different, and what the outcome is will be different. And I think usually in this environment, for a far better result for all involved.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Chris, for that honesty.
Thank you.
But moving on to Aaron. Aaron, you're a person of colour. In this programme, you're going to be having to share your experiencing and mentoring white leaders in the organisation. Tell us, Aaron, what was that like?
Thank you all. So can I just correct you, Diana? It's Arun Mandalia. I'm reclaiming my identity of being literally called what I am known outside by the family and everyone else. Arun Mandalia. Thank you. So I'm so privileged and honoured to be here talking about my experience. And I remember back that day, Stacey, I heard the training that took place. I was just absolutely gobsmacked by what I heard about the training around reverse mentoring. And I remember so well Stacey saying that this is a journey, it's uncharted waters. And as she corrected you, Diana, that we were the first organization to go through. So in many ways, this was uncharted waters. And at that time, I didn't know who I was going to be paired with. So it was all an intrigue, and it was just incredible in the sense that it will be, the rules will be what you and your mentee will set. So as soon as I knew, I spent the whole day with the training, and as soon as afterwards I knew who the mentee was, and then I contacted, and it was an absolute a blank slate in terms of how you go about it. So I set up, and this is a power reversal situation. And so it was like, how can I not meet my mentee in their office space or in their environment? So I chose the venues, and they were, I was looking for a place called, New Beginnings, but I found a bar, a restaurant place called The World's End in rural Northamptonshire. But that's where we had our first meeting, and we broke the ice, and we basically talked about the process of reverse mentoring, what we would feel comfortable with, uncomfortable with, and we set up 3 further meetings as such. And what I remember and what really made an incredible difference to me, in a sense, was I was the one who was setting homework. I was the one who was actually assigning reading, assigning some books to read, and offering out to my mentee to read. And then we would meet the next time and reflect and talk. And it was an incredible journey for me as well as the mentee, talking about some of the experiences. And in fact, the second meeting was actually over at a place of worship. How often does a senior manager and a member of the organization be invited and given a kind of a cultural tour of a place of worship? I'm a Hindu, so I literally took my mentee there, and for the mentee it was just something else, because they wouldn't have done that normally. And one further thing I did was the whole reverse mentoring is an immersion into how the other person lives, thinks, breathes. So it gives them a kind of a different dimension to what they can take into their daily activities in their life. And I also took my mentee to meet my dear elderly mother for 10-15 minutes. And again, that was just another experience which the mentee has never forgotten, and nor my mother, in a sense. She suffered a heart attack just before the COVID, and my mentee went through some difficult health issues, but there was so much of like still being in touch. My mother sent good wishes. She lighted a Devo to say that on the day of the operation, you know, I do wish mentee to have a good experience in terms of the operation. But so for me to be a founder, a pioneer for Stacey's work, I was truly honoured. And with my mentee, I'm still in touch, and she's given feedback as it's standing up. I mean, it's a personal understanding. It's been eye-opening, unforgettable experience. It's been challenging and provoking. It's made her think of things which she wouldn't have normally thought through her day-to-day activities, and how the piece that I gave her to kind of look into was a Robin DiAngelo on white privilege. And in fact, she didn't just read the article, but she actually went out and watched a YouTube, which really then the penny dropped about just where she's come from and how she's come from, and the aspect where white privilege comes in. So it was so powerful. And I think if our paths hadn't crossed, and if I hadn't been a mentor, perhaps it may have come at some point in the mentee's sort of working lifespan. But she is now in a position where she can influence change and make a difference within her teams, and of course with her circle of friends and family. So it has a ripple effect in terms of this program. It's not just the work aspect. You carry those thoughts with you wherever you are. And that is so powerful in a sense, because it's like we may think that we're making a small difference, well, a big difference within our organization, but we're having a wider effect outside. So so thank you. That was my experience of being a mentee and being a pioneer of Stacey's wonderful work.
Thank you very much, Arun, for that. What I can say is that we've heard from Chris and Arun, two different cultures, two different upbringings in the workplace, forming a culture that's going to be beneficial for the workforce, that will then impact on the clients, on the patients. So that was a really interesting experience. What I want to say now is that we want that gift in Northamptonshire Healthcare Partnership. We want to feel what you guys feel. We want to share that gift across all of our member organisations. That's our ambition. So the plan is this. Stacy Johnson will be working with our organisation to roll out reverse mentoring across Northamptonshire. We will be inviting you to become a mentor or a mentee or a trainer. Training will be given because Stacy is going to officiate that training, and then she will be officiating the Train the Trainer programme. You've heard from Chris the impact of reverse mentoring, from Arun. You've heard from Angela Hillary how the organisation has benefited and why it's important for organisations to sign up to this programme. We've heard from David why they've done it. Why did Nhft do reverse mentoring and how it helped them to become an outstanding organisation. Now we want a piece of that. We want to share that gift with you all. So what we'd like to do now is just to discuss a little bit about any concerns or questions, or don't be shy, we're all friends now, we've been here nearly an hour. Any questions that you've got on reverse mentoring. So we'd like to open up the mic. I can see a hand, but I can't see who it is. So Louise, would you like to share who that is, please?
I can share. That's Rudo. I think I've pronounced that correctly. You are on camera now if you want to talk.
Yeah.
Hello, Rudo.
Oh, hi, Diana. Hi, Stacey and everybody else. Thanks for a wonderful presentation. This really excited me. I was paired with, I'm a clinical specialist working at Kettering General Hospital, and I was paired with one of the executive members to do reverse mentorship. But I think what we went through, we were just going through it as we're going along. It's completely different from what you've explained. So I was just wondering, are you affiliated with Kettering General Hospital at all? Because I'm feeling I could have really done with the training, so I knew what I was going into, because even though I was doing the reverse mentorship, but that power flipping was not completely there. We went through it and it was good in a way, but I don't think it was as in-depth. So that's why I'm just asking, is there a link with Kettering General Hospital for the training?
Who would like to take that question? I can start it off. Rudo, thank you for your question. What I can say is that Kettering General Hospital is part of our system, Northamptonshire Health and Care Partnership. You're one of our partners, so we're going to be welcoming Kettering General Hospital on this reverse mentoring journey that we will commence this year across all organisations. So yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'll be speaking to my mentee because I'm paired with someone within the board. So I think it would be a very good course to go through. Thank you.
That's brilliant, thank you. And I will put my name in the chat and we will share it with everyone that's attended today, an email address so that you can contact us so that we can support you. I have a pre-question that came up from a colleague that would like me to raise it, and it's open to Angela and Chris. Was it difficult being a white person to hear the stories from Black, Asian and minority ethnic staff?
Yeah, I'll start. Good question. Yes, it was, and several reasons. One, because it's never easy to hear about any staff experience where you feel we didn't get it right or we didn't do the right thing. So that in itself is always hard. But I think what was particularly hard for me was that I thought I saw it and I thought I knew. And I think it was that realization of, no, I didn't. And actually, there was more that was hidden in plain sight. That, and it comes back to that, what I said about being curious, more curious. So that was pretty hard. That was hard. But that was my experience.
Thank you, Angela. And Chris? I think you're mute.
Yes, it's hard to hear some experiences people have had. But the lasting thing for me, hard might not, is may be the wrong word. It's that challenge. You've got to open up and push yourself to keep thinking about what you're hearing and keep reflecting on it. It's almost like you need to buy it. You can sort of hear it once and then I'll move on, but that isn't what it's about. It's if you hear it and you talk with your mentor or maybe talk with others, you need to keep reflecting on and noticing. And I think that's the key thing. Lots of people wander around not noticing what's going on. I mean, the story I've told you many times, Diana, it's like before, going to a restaurant that's just full of white people, quite frankly, and just not noticing it, thinking, okay, there we are. But moving to that space where you think, hang on a minute, if I'm a Bay member of staff and I want to come in here and have breakfast or lunch, how's this going to feel? What's this going to be like? And then that starts to flow through so many other things that you experience and see. And I think that's the thing. It's hard's the right word. Where we all need to get to is being curious, listening to what's happened, keep reflecting on it, and then we all start to shift. We shift the experience for everyone. And I think that was from what I described as the understanding racism with lots of colleagues in Nhft, and David could probably comment as well. That's what came out a lot. It's a lot of people started to talk about things that they'd seen one way before and they started to see differently. And if we all see it differently, then it will move. And I suppose, again, take that, if we all saw the fence was there rather than not realizing it was there, how much would that change things?
Thank you, Chris. There is a hand up, but I can't see who the person is. Can you see Dawn?
Yeah, so before I come to the hands, there have been a couple of questions in the chat box for quite a while. So if I can just ask a couple of those first.
Thank you.
I know that we talked a little bit about this, but will there be training dates available and how do we apply is from Rachel.
Hello, Rachel, and thank you for that question. Nice to know that you're keen and waiting to go. So what's going to be happening? We will be designing the programme with Stacy. So we hope to do that in the next few months. And we would like to roll out reverse mentoring across our partnership in the autumn. So it's not that you're hearing this today and you've got a long time to wait. We're on it. We're on the case. So yes, there will be training and all that will be announced fairly soon. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. And we've got another one from Verity. I'm really interested in the partnership between the learning outcomes from this programme and the organisational systems and structures that are propping up the fence. How is this being addressed?
Could you just repeat that question, please?
Yeah, of course I can. So I'm really interested in the partnership between the learning outcomes from this programme and the organisational systems and structures that are propping up the fence. And then the question is, how is this being addressed?
Shall I have a go at that one? And then perhaps you can talk about the Northamptonshire experience. So Verity, it's a really great question. Reverse mentoring is not just about titillation, right? So it's not even just leaders coming to consciousness and gaining insight and hearing these difficult stories, not trauma theatre. We really emphasize insight into action. And that's why we do it in a cohorts, not one leader, one junior person. It's cohorts because we want those leaders to collectively take action on the system. And so the idea is that we're really prompting them and the junior staff are holding them to account. What have you done as a result? What have you done that's different? Not about fixing my life, but about fixing the structures, the fence that made that situation come to be. So we're really prompting them all the way through their relationships and post the relationships to take action on the system. And that's why it's really important for it to go, for me anyway, beyond just individual organizations, to be having these conversations amongst leaders at ICS level, right? And so what I often say to organizations is when the relationships finish is when the work for the organizations start. That's when you really start dismantling the structures. And I've heard great examples. I think, Chris mentioned the difference in the WDES action plan post reverse mentoring, the difference in the RES action plan post reverse mentoring. I don't know, I'll hand back to Diana or Angela or Chris to see if they've got any other specific examples.
Yeah, no, I think, thanks, Stacey. And I think that it's always about action, isn't it? And as you say, Chris has described some of the actions in our plans, etc., which clearly align to all of this work. But beyond that, I think it's about, you know, the board learning, the board development that's undertaken as a result of this, the fact that in our group we've said this is a key priority. These are all parts of things where we're trying to link and connect it all the time. The fact that we're having this session actually for the partnership across Northamptonshire is because we believe this is something that needs to grow beyond Nhft. It needs to be done as a system. So it's always looking for opportunities to say, how do we internally consider where it fits in our actions that we take, but also how do we connect it more fundamentally with our other partners? And I think that's as important as the internal actions.
Thank you, Angela. I am conscious of the time, and we have gone slightly over the time, but it's because we're so keen and interested in the subject. There are some questions in the chat box that I would like to obviously address, and I've put my contact details in the chat box so that you can contact us to further that conversation. So please do contact me so that we can take this forward. So what we're going to do now, I'd like to thank Northamptonshire Healthcare Foundation Trust for presenting their reverse mentoring experience to us today. Thank you, Stacey. You're not going to be a stranger. You're going to be in the forefront of the development of reverse mentoring across the whole partnership. So thank you very much once again for coming today to hear about the reverse mentoring experience.